Hey Scrappy Peeps, Suzanna here today to share with you a layout I created for Cocoa Daisy using the August kits, and the emphasis on this layout is stamping. I used the main stamps, and I happened to be on the road when I was creating this layout, and there were a number of things that I forgot. So this is a creative stamping layout. Sorry about the jump there, but like I said, I was on the road and I had a makeshift setup, and I think somebody texted me and it cut through. But basically, I am working on an 8.5 by 11 layout. So I'm trimming my cardstock down to fit onto the 8.5 by 11 pattern paper that I trimmed down. This is a picture of my son and I. I joke with him frequently about taking a selfie, and he's not a selfie kid, and so I was attempting a selfie and it was blurry. And I just loved the blur of the photo, and the title of the layout ends up becoming Blur. And I just talk about how life is a blur when you have a teenager and the years seem to fly by. So I have these digital die cuts that I brought with me. I'd cut ahead of time and I wasn't sure what I was going to use. And funnily enough, I don't actually end up using them on this layout despite shuffling them around a lot, but I do use them on another layout for Cocoa Daisy later this month. So I was inspired by these two speech bubbles. One of them has hello typed into the center of it, and I didn't want that because I knew I wanted to use the speech bubble to write on. So I used my X-Acto and my scissors to cut hello out. And if I want hello in there, it's easy enough to snugly fit back in. I do go and try and cut out the lines too, but they're too close to the edge, and I thought I can use the lines to write on. So I forgot to bring an acrylic block with me. So you can see how I stuck the top of those speech bubbles onto the top of my ink pad. And I also didn't bring any watercolors. The only things that I had with me were these inks, and so I wanted color behind the speech bubble, and you can see I'm testing it out there. So I just dipped my thumb in the ink and used my thumbprint, which was a perfect size, behind the back of these speech bubbles, and that is how I got the color behind my speech bubbles. I was pretty tickled pink with myself at this little discovery. So I just tried each one out, cleaned off my thumb with a washcloth in between each color so that I didn't muddy each color, and I just randomly stamped. I really had no I just wanted them spaced out across the top of the page because I knew I was going to end up putting the picture down at the bottom of the page. And I did try and orient, obviously, the bubble with the speech bubble with the lines up and down, and so I turned the other bubble the other way in order to give some variety to this. I did have to go over my thumbprint a couple of times in order to provide some solid color there. And they do go a little bit outside of the speech bubble, but I'm really not worried about it because, like I said, I was scrapping on the road, and the perfectionist in me had to let go and be a little bit more flexible with what I was doing. So I just used my VersaFine ink here and stamped with the black ink around the edges of those colored thumbprints there. And I thought that created a really cool background, and it complemented the colors in the flowers behind. The red is a different hue of red, but because it's just a subtle peak poking out of the top and bottom and sides of this layout, you can't see that it isn't quite match. The other thing I forgot to bring with me was an ATG gun. So I am using my Prima pen, glue pen here to just stick everything down. And again, that works fine, but would not have been my adhesive of choice were I at home. So I wanted to back this picture, and I had originally pulled out that green and that navy blue, as you can see from the beginning of my layout, and the navy blue actually doesn't end up going on there anywhere because it's too dark for what I want. So So I mat my photo on some white because I like to have a thin white border around my pictures, and I don't always print them as such, and trim that down. And then I'm going to put that photo and mat it on green. And similar to something I did earlier with a layout that's over on Spiegelmom Scraps, I actually butt up the picture, or the edge of the mat of this picture, to the edge of my layout, which is kind of scary to me, but it ended up looking much better that way. And rather than trimming the edge, I liked the rough ripped edge there, which also gave me a perfect other ripped edge to go for a splash of color to the outside of that picture. So I just glue that down, and I like the way that that ended up turning out. It was perfect with the ripped edges. I love the way that it complements the blur in the photos. So you can see I want something up in that top left corner up there, and I really struggled with what that something was going to end up being. I pulled out the ephemera pack from Fancy Pants, and I used the stars to embellish a few of the speech bubbles, and I'm looking for something to go in the top left, as well as maybe some of the words to be the title. And I ended up choosing Don't Stop Believing as sort of a subtitle to the layout. I thought that cloud looked fun, but it was sort of cutesy for a teen boy layout, so I will find something else later on down the road. I don't have my handy little container, so because I'm scrapping on the road, so I'm just sort of shuffling through things. And I did look at the back ahead of time, and instead I will pull out in a minute the Cocoa Daisy exclusives, and I'll find something for the top there. Now I had the arrows, and I thought that the arrows would make a fun header to the top of the layout there, but again, I don't have my acrylic block, and they're not going to fit on the top of the stamps like inks like I'd used before, so I used my clear ruler. It was a perfect acrylic block, only it was a little long, so I had to shift things around in order to make the length of the ruler work as I was stamping. So you could see I moved my trimmer out of the way there. Now, as I get to the end here, I will stamp 3 of the arrows, and then I will have a big white space. So I just use that scrap paper there to block off the end of the arrow, and then I use the scrap paper again to block off the other end of the stamp so that I can just get the arrow on the end there. And it was a perfect compromise to my stamping woes on the road. So just use my washcloth there to clean everything off and stick this down. And you can see I've still got that empty corner up the top left there. So I need to fill that after adhering everything down, because I've committed to these things on my layout. The adhesive didn't work quite as well as my dot glue gun ATG or tape runner would have worked, but it worked just fine till I got home and I could put things down a little bit more permanently. So I had these puffy stickers that come with the kit, and while I had used the stars, I thought maybe something a little bit different around a few of the other these circles. Puffy circle stickers would be perfect around a few of the beach bubbles that I've left open. And I find this puffy arrow that says "Oh Joy." I liked the heaviness of the color, just to kind of draw your eye from the top of the page down to the photo on that diagonal there. And as the speech bubbles are sort of whimsical moving across the page, you don't actually move in a straight line, because you'll see later on that I journaled on these speech bubbles as well as journaled on the layout itself. And I find these clouds that I absolutely love, and the colors complement complement the colors in the layout. What you don't see me do here, because I was on the road and I didn't have foam dots, is I just used the glue gun to the liquid glue to adhere them down, and then when I get home I used some thread behind the clouds and some glue dots there to adhere that. I do go in later and write in the speech bubbles my journaling, as well as journal on the actual layout itself, and then I use the white thickers to put my title blur. There are a few close-ups to follow. I hope you were inspired to scrap on the road and enjoyed this process video. Thanks for joining me today. Take care.